Welcome to AstroChat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monika Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits, or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another week of AstroChat. You are joined, as always, by myself, Kimberly Williams, and my cohorts, Anne Sundell and Monika Anna. And we're here to chat about the astrology of this upcoming lunation and the 2 weeks that follow. So we're going to be talking a lot about the new moon, which is happening at February 20th. It's going to be at 1 degree, 22 minutes of Pisces. So if you are a sun sign Pisces or have a moon or a rising there, this might be of even particular importance for you. It's going to be occurring at 6:06 in the morning here in Central Time Zone, USA, and across the pond over in England, that would be at 7:06 in the morning, and then 9:06 in Finland. Feel free to convert it to your time zone so you can follow along with us. We're going to be talking about that 2-week span of the new moon and what happens leading up to the next full moon, which we will see occur on March 7th in Virgo. But first, let's talk about the Sabian symbol for this lunation.
So I noticed that people interpret the Sabian symbols differently. So sometimes the interpretation for this moon, that would be 122 in Fishes, would be the 1st degree. And for other people, it would be the 2nd degree. And today I'm going to do the 2nd degree of Fishes. So we have a squirrel hiding from hunters. That's the headline. And it's about the individual need both to ensure his future subsistence and to protect himself from aggressive social elements. So it's a moon that continues both gathering their own resources, but also to be careful and to look out for problems that might come. And I think that this is also quite good in regard to a Fishes moon, because it can also be very idealistic, and we need to also see clearly and realistically.
Yeah. It's interesting Sabian symbol to unpack. I think going deeper into the transits, as we always do, will kind of make more sense. But with the Pisces and with that hiding from the hunters, that idea of being a victim, of hiding, of being persecuted, I think that can be heightened not only at the new moon, but as we all remember, the new moon starts the whole monthly cycle. So it might be a month where that kind of feelings of being a victim, of feeling like a victim, might come to the surface as well. Other situations that put us in that position where we are in a victimized position, or we need to hide from something. So
yeah,
I guess we're going to go into the new moon now in
Yeah,
Pisces.
right.
So we might as well. Again, another cycle begins. We just finished one month, then the sun moved to the sign of Pisces, and we celebrate another month in another archetype. So what the new moon does for us so beautifully, it just starts a whole new month and highlights the energy of the current archetype. And Kimberly, you said that so lovely in the last episode when you compared the full moon to the new moon, that the new moon we have more time to get used to the archetype, because the sun's going through that archetype for a whole month. When the full moon, it just happens, it's the movement of the moon, it just happens. and we have more of that internal feeling to that. What I always say when it comes to the new moon, it gives us opportunity to stop, obviously reflect, start something else, put the seeds and affirmation for the month ahead. But also, whenever we want to understand the archetype that rules the current season, it's good to kind of give ourselves some mindfulness prompts to look outside and what's happening around us in that season. And we're going into archetypes of Pisces. This is the mutable sign, not mutual, mutable sign, where we're finishing one season. Things already melt away in the northern hemisphere, and the world is preparing for completely new season with the beginning of Aries. So this is the time when, again, we're finishing one season. We can summarize the last quarter. We can already smell the spring in the air, even if the ground is still covered in snow or mud. So this is the season that we can observe, we can see what's happening, and what's happening as well, on that kind of mythological archetypal level. We all dream the dream of spring already. We all are keen to kind of go into, oh my God, it's spring, it's summer, it's the shorts, it's the dresses, it's being bare feet on the grass. We can already feel that dream and dream that dream, but we're not quite there yet. And for me, Pisces is such a lovely time of, I call them spaces in between, or times in between, where we're taking the dreams and the visions that we kind of got in the middle of the winter, or the seeds that we planted in Capricorn at the beginning of the winter, and we now can see all the steps we will be able to take in Aries, all the steps, all the fire that we can put into those visions, those goals, those, if anyone dare to set New Year's resolutions. New moon in Pisces, again, it's one of those moons that talks about our sensitivity. It talks about our emotions, the floods of emotions that we can get at the time. This used to be a quite dangerous time, when that kind of closeness of not being able to survive until spring was very real for people, especially who lived in the northern hemisphere. So it has that kind of connection with the otherworldly thing that we can sense as well. So it's always interesting getting the words, I promise you. It's another interesting new moon. I don't want to hug all the conversation here, so I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this.
Go for it, Anne.
Yeah, it's a new moon in fishes. When I think about the fishes, I think about symbolically, where person that's listening to radio on all frequencies at the same time, like you get a lot of information, you're very sensitive to taking in everything, and it's very hard to sort out what's the thing, what's the real thing of all these different energies that's overwhelming me. So I also feel that it's very inspiring. It's very good for dreaming, for visioning, for intuition, but it can also be very hard to really sort out what's the real thing here, what's the dream, what's the ideal, what's the plan I want to make, and what's the realism about it. So it's yeah, as you say, it's a moon that it's a new moon, but it's the last moon of the zodiac at the same time. It's completion and beginning at the same time. So yeah, a bit mixed feelings about it.
Mixed feelings is the perfect phrase, right? Ditto to everything you guys said. And I would also add that for me, I'm always reminded when I look at the symbol for Pisces that it is the fishes, as Anne says, right? It's the two fish. There's one going up, there's one going down. They're always in these opposite directions. So emotionally, with the moon being there, we may feel the struggle of this push-pull. I'm feeling really happy, and then I'm feeling really melancholic. I'm feeling like I'm safe, I'm protected, then I'm feeling like, oh, what was that Sabian symbol? The squirrel that is being hunted. There can be this, I'm feeling fine, then I'm feeling victimized. And sometimes I'm feeling them both at the same time. These conflicting emotions that can simultaneously occur. We're capable of holding so much in our emotional space. So that I think often happens. And it makes it hard to stay still. It makes it hard when you're in a mutable sign like this, when the moon is in that mutable sign. I think it makes it very hard to have an inner feeling, a gut feeling of where I should be going, because I don't even know what I'm feeling. It's a mixed bag and it's constantly in flux. I think flux is probably a good word, for Pisces. So I always think with the water signs of Cancer is like being at the shore and that little tide is coming in and going out. And Scorpio, I'm putting on, the flip-flops and the snorkels and I'm going down and I'm going to see what's underneath there. And then with Pisces, I'm putting on the scuba diver and I'm going way down. I'm going to go discover like the hidden squid, that we didn't know existed. It's the depths of our, with the moon, it would be the depths of our emotional being. So I think when the moon is in Pisces is a really good time for what has been hidden from view to come up, to hold space, to just allow our emotions to flow without trying to analyze or question them. We can do that later. Now is just the time to be gentle with ourselves and hold space for that flux.
Yeah. Piscean, I mean, I love that you bring the waters, right? Because Piscean waters are ultimately the waters of creation. Those are the waters of, the baby being in the womb and then coming out screaming and kicking, in Aries. So this is the safe space. This is, we're safe, we're protected, we're swimming in those waters and we're dreaming the dream. But at some point we'll have to wake up, we'll have to come out, with the Aries kicking and screaming into the real world, so to speak. And like Anne said, and have that reality check. Piscean waters and new moon, I think, can take us into that fantasy land. Those are the waters of dreamers, of mystics, of people who want to detach from reality. And from time to time, we all need, put on that Netflix, switch on to that show, and just binge and detach from reality completely. But sometimes, that detachment is not for entertainment or pleasure purposes anymore. That goes down deeper into those dark waters of I just want to completely detach from reality and not in a healthy way. So this is the month that we're going into. And interestingly enough, at that new moon, the closest aspect to that new moon is Saturn conjunct. So the closest aspect to the moon is Saturn, which is sitting right there by the new moon in the last degrees of Aquarius. And I think now be a good time to look at the chart because we'll talk about the aspects. So Saturn is sitting at 28 degrees of Aquarius, so only 3 degrees away from that new moon. It's still at the very last degrees of Aquarius, and what that means to me, what that shows me is that this new moon and all those Piscean waters and all that dreaming and all that fantasy will kind of need to cooperate with Saturn, because Saturn goes hand to hand with them, and Saturn goes, well, okay, well, we're dreaming about this dream, but what's happening? And I'm with it. Like, I am Aquarius, I am on the same vibe. I can understand, but I still need some structure. I still need, to have that practicality. We can dream the dream and go on this amazing trip, but we need practicality. We can vibe on this amazing festival, but we need practicality. So I feel like Saturn is calling out to this new moon. It's like, okay, I hear you. I see the vision. I can feel, what you dream of. But what is the structure that we need to put in to revolutionize that? What is the boundaries that maybe we need to set so we're not going to drown in this ocean? Actually, Kimberly, what you said about that diving, I'm not a diver myself, always wanted to, so maybe there's still chance to learn. But what I've learned about divers, especially that deep sea divers, people who dive in caves and so on, when you're at certain level in the ocean, you don't know what's up or down. And it's very easy to actually lose track of what is, because you're literally swimming in that womb of creation, in that, and you don't know what's up and down, what's left or right, which means it's very, very dangerous to do. And I think this is what the Saturn reminds me of. You know, you need that Ariadne thread to go back to something. You need structure, you need containment, to dream, because dream without that boundary, it's dangerous.
Absolutely. And for those who are watching us on YouTube, I hope you're enjoying the discotheque ambiance of our computer screens flashing out. It looks like they're having a party over in Finland.
Maybe, yeah.
I would so agree with what you're saying. And, you know, there's something really interesting about when you start to mix Saturn and Pisces in any kind of aspect configuration. Saturn wants to pull back. It wants to make us, you know, figure it out. Saturn wants to create a box. Pisces is more like, I want to be everywhere. There is no boundary. You know, often, you know, Pisces is like the water that just keeps moving and going anywhere it can. So I love the idea of we need to have some boundaries or else that dream can become dangerous. I like that a lot. But I'm also wondering, and I guess feeling that there can also be that feeling of it feels hard. Coming from a Pisces point of view, it can feel hard and it can feel harsh when there's a boundary, whether we set it for ourselves or perhaps this is saying others around us. You know, the Saturnian figures in our life, the older people, the father figures, you know, all the things that would be Saturnian. You know, it may be that those are where we're feeling the hard stop. They're helping to put boundaries in place. But if it's not something that I'm coming from a place of wanting, if I'm coming from, I'm in the dream and I want to just keep running with it, the whole reality check that comes up can be a little bit bumpy, I think, to feel.
Yeah, and if you think about, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just thought about fishes as being people that can also see the potentials, to see the real potential in a person or the real potential in a dream, and then it's quite uninspiring when Saturn comes along and tells you, it might feel like you're hitting a wall after that seeing this is how it could be, this is the ideal that could be happening, and then it's like no. So yeah.
I mean, you guys know that I love my Saturn and I'll protect it and I'll fight for it. But the two things that actually came up when you both were talking, one is and what you said earlier about the Sabian symbol, you know, with just going with the flow with the dream so much that, you know, you don't have that Saturnian security. It can feel very much to what the symbol's talking about, you know, that kind of victim mode. What if I can't put my own boundaries and I find myself way too, you know, too exposed? Because what Piscean waters do as well for us, they're exposing us, right? So I feel too exposed, or I was too dreamy and I wasn't looking where I was going and suddenly finding myself in trouble. So that's the kind of one thing that I was thinking, how that Sabian symbol can speak to what's happening in the sky. The second, Kimberly, actually, what you were talking, I was thinking about how Saturn and Pisces can work together. And what I was thinking as well is Pisces archetype, for me, it's very much linked to psychedelic experience, right? So whenever we have psychedelic experience, whether it's with a mushroom, with LSD, or with, you know, things like ayahuasca, you can have two different experiences. You know, one is that kind of like, I'm taking it because it just feels good and I'm flowing with it, and there is no end to it, because again, Pisces, you know, there is no end to them. You know, they're just expanding and expanding like the ocean. So you can just take that and flow with it to the point when there is no return, so to speak. Or you can have that, you know, amazing, mystical, out of this world experience in Saturnian structure that is provided by a ritual or sacred retreat. You know, the sacred retreat or a sanctity of the ritual is effectively a Saturnian structure. we do certain things in a certain way, you know, to help with that experience, so that Saturn can help and contain and elevate what Pisces will then bring, you know, as an experience. So that's, you know, again, how we want to experience that, whether we'll feel burdened by the Saturn and want to kind of break free and it's like, you can't tell me what to do and I'm going to do it on my own, or whether we'll find that security and safety within the container to actually, you know, let go. Again, security of safety of meditation. You wouldn't do a meditation when you're driving, you know, like proper path working meditation when you're driving, you know, 80 miles an hour on a motorway. That's unsafe. But in a safety and security and structure of your own sacred space at home, when you can slow down and relax, you might lose track of time. Like you sat down for 10 minutes meditation, an hour later, it was like, oh, here I am. That's the kind of Piscean waters, you know, you just lost track of time and reality, but in a container that provided that for you.
That's a really good point. That's such a good point, because
I
Saturn is the
cannot
ruler.
protect Saturn.
I'm sorry, I don't think Saturn needs a whole lot of protection, but you go for it. You nurture and protect that Saturn. I think it's interesting you mentioned time, because Saturn is a ruler of time. And I think you're right. That's what happens when you start to mix Pisces and Saturn together. We lose time, or we lose track of time. It's interesting to me that right now Saturn's hanging out in the last 2 degrees. On the new moon, we're going to see Saturn at 28 degrees. And over the course of the waxing moon phases, it's going to go to 29. Those last 2 degrees in traditional astrology, I believe they were ruled by the malefics, right? That 28 degrees, if I remember correctly, is Saturn's degree of any sign, and 29 degrees is Mars' degree of any sign. And so there's a certain edginess that I sense with this. And it makes sense to me, even if we're not doing traditional thinking, just to think about the end of a sign. Pretty soon Saturn's going to leave the sign and have other work for us to do. So the push, I think, is, have I figured it out? Have we learned the lessons that Saturn came to teach us back in December of 2020? Remember that far back? You know, what were we supposed to do about taking responsibility for creating a life that reflects our true authentic self? I mean, that was kind of a really big mission. And have we done that work? Have we taken down the walls? Have we, you know, taken responsibility? Have we done the adulting that we needed to do in some area? And if we haven't, this could be that push of, come on, it's like, it's do or die. It's now or never. We must embrace Saturn. And at the same time, we need to be watery, and we need to be open, and we need to allow that vision to flow. That can be a hard juggle to do both of those at the same time. And in traditional Pisces, mutable, 2 fishes kind of mode, I think we're going to have both of these. And so the question I guess I'm asking myself is, am I going to work with Saturn as the supportive Saturn that says, hey, you have what it takes to build the structure that's going to allow your dream to become the reality? That would be great. Or am I going to work with the Saturn that's the, hey, you've been escaping, you've been using the negative side of Pisces to escape reality, and now it's time for that hard reality check, boom. So I think there's a potentiality for either and or both to kind of be happening as we're, you know, entering this lunation of this month.
We have another aspect to that lunation, don't we, Kimberly?
Yeah. We also see that the lunation is making contact to the nodes. It's making a trine to the south node up at 6 degrees of Scorpio, and a sextile to the north node at 6 degrees of Taurus. We've been talking about the nodes a lot the last couple of months, right? We've been talking about their contacts with Uranus and with other things. So here we see a lunation coming in, and it's these lovely harmonious contacts. So the water trine is what really pulls me, pardon the pun, pulls me to think about, if I've done the work of Scorpio, we've had a lot of eclipses in these nodal signs. So if I've done the work and I've actually let go and allowed some part of my ego to die off, then I'm ready for the rebirth, right? That other side of Scorpio. So I feel like this is almost saying, and what is going to be reborn? What is coming forward? How is my phoenix going to rise from the ashes? It feels to me a much more kind of positiveness. And the South Node, I think, gets a bad rap a lot of the times. We talk about it's what has been and you need to let it go, period. But that's not all. It's what has been. And it is both what I cling to because it's my comfort zone, and that might be a hindrance, but it's also what have I learned and what skills have I gained? And so let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think this is saying I can extrapolate, I can pull from those past experiences that I've had, and I can use them to help me figure out how to step into the dream, how to step into that space. Conversely, with the North Node, we have a great sextile about how I'm going to move forward. And again, it's that earth and water. So I think it's this, how am I going to build on the earthly plane in 3D physical reality? How am I going to take that dream and bring it here? How am I going to pull from my soul and make something happen here? It feels so strong and so supportive to me. I don't know what y'all think about it.
I agree with what you're saying. I like what you said, that it just feels supportive. It just feels supportive. The nodal axis, it's the axis, it's very often we hear saying things like, our nodal axis is the destiny axis. And there's something fated to it. And again, whenever nodal axis makes significant contacts, whether it's to the new moon, to something in your personal chart, it's worth paying attention to, because those are usually the fated events that happens. So for this new moon, again, to make that lovely trine and lovely sextile, it just feels like there is something supportive around the fate, if you will, around that new moon and that lunation and that cycle that we begin, that can help us. But then again, it can help us do the great things, or it can help us feel even worse, like a victim, escaping from the hunter. So what is it that we choose to do that aspect can help support?
And Anne, I think you had an interesting point earlier about so few aspects happening in this chart.
Yeah, we noticed that there are not so many main aspects to this moon, and also between the other planets there are not so many grounding aspects or aspects that helps the planets work together and integrate them. And sometimes this might also be felt when you were talking, Monika, about being victim or being feeling that I'm a martyr or things are just happening to me. Then sometimes when we don't have so many aspects, we can feel like things are coming from the outside. It's things that we can control, or we can call it fate, or it might be the first impulse to think like that. But when we go deeper into thinking about the issue, then we might see also that it's connected to things that has been happening before, to the way we have been dealing with these themes and building them or not. But it might like give more of this. It's harder to integrate those planets, and it's maybe harder to see where they're at or how we can work with them. We need to be more conscious of them to get them to work for us. And of course, with fishes, a lot of fishes, it might be also the same thing, that we're a bit confused or we are not sure in what direction we should go. So I connect maybe that with also the fishes.
Yeah. There's also a beauty. There's also a beauty, I think, when you don't have many aspects, because the ones you do have, they hit harder. They're more defined. I mean, there have been months when we've talked about 5 or 6 things happening to the sun and the moon on a new moon, and it's hard to really understand how am I feeling all of these simultaneously. Here, it's almost like a laser beam. We have this contact. We have this conjunction with Saturn and all that it brings. We have these trine sextiles, all that it brings, and that's it. That's the focus, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. There's a certain amount of focus that each planet can put forward when it's not being pulled like Gumby from, a multitude of aspects.
Yeah, it's like more a raw version of the planet. It's more a pure version of that planet, but it's still maybe some theme that it doesn't really even want to be pinned down by aspects. It want to go its own way. So that can be feeling a bit more disconnected, or that you concentrate on one part and then on the other part, and to put those together is requires more work.
I mean, we don't have very many aspects to the moon itself. However, we do have a couple more aspects during this lunation. And one of them is Venus and Pluto making a sextile. And Venus is at 29 of Pisces and Pluto is at 29 of Capricorn, both getting ready to change signs. So Venus will change sign before the next full moon and she'll go into Aries. Pluto will take a little bit longer to go into Aquarius, but both are at the last degree of the sign. That is always considered quite important, quite tricky, because it's for me the 29th degree of the sign is like that ultimate exam before you can move on to the next year, right? So the kind of GCSE or A levels, or whatever we have in our respective countries. But you spent 30 degrees, right, within the sign. So you've learned through it. You learn different aspects of that sign, of that energy, how it can manifest, how you can play with it, how you can use it, how you can work with it. And then it's 29 degree, and the kind of the planet that moves from it is like, do you understand what I do in this sign? So Pluto will ask us at 29 degrees, do you understand what is that Plutonian power within the Capricorn? Do you understand what is the Plutonian power within structure? What it means to, be in power? What it means to, be an authority and wield power? Do you know what it really means to, work hard and climb that, corporate ladder, for example, and get to the top and be in power, if you will. Pluto will also talk about, do you understand the shadow of power, the shadow of structure, the shadow of organizations, whether they will be government, company organization or charity organization. Have you understand the shadow part of that sign, the shadow part of that power within organization, within the structure? Again, Capricorn can be this amazing supportive structure that help us become the expert that we are. Capricorn is the structure that we learn through, and then at the end we achieve the power because we've learned our lessons, we've understood the subject, and that power is internalized. Or it can be the shadow of it, we grab it because we want the power, not experience. Or so Pluto will be asking those questions. And Venus, at the end of Pisces, again, ask us about the dreams and understanding of what it means to dream and fantasize and create the dreams. And two of them together, they're, for me, probably more than in any other signs, potentially, there is that kind of story of Persephone. Pluto in Capricorn, wielding the power over the Piscean desire for expression, for flow, for feelings, for diving into unconscious. So there's something about that Persephone, kidnapping of the Persephone, dragging her into the underworld, wielding that power over that self-expression and desire of dreaming the dream for the sake of dream. And having the fantasy and being free within that.
It's funny that you pick on Persephone, because I was instantly thinking Inanna, another goddess of the descent. And I think about Venus and as the faster moving of these planets has been really been applying some energy to Pluto up till now about what do we desire? And do you desire it enough that it's worth facing the fears? You know, it's one thing to say, I really want something. It's another thing to desire it, to be chomping at the bit, to desire to start your own business, even though you're afraid of the financial repercussions, to desire to, you know, speak your truth, even though there could be repercussions. And one of the things that always stood out for me in the story of Inanna was after she did this descent into the underworld to see her sister, and her sister hangs her on a meat hook and her ego dies off, as it were. And then she is released and comes back and takes all of her empowerment objects back on. Before she can return, she is told that when you return, the first person who betrays you has to take your place here in the underworld. So she returns to take her place as, you know, the queen of heaven, even though she knows the cost that's going to come. She doesn't know who, but she, and so that moment of, do I desire this enough to pay the price, to face the fear, to let some part of me go, to be released so that I can move forward? So I feel like there's that really big question, and yet we may not know the question because Venus is also making the last bits of her contact, her conjunction with Neptune. So learning to let go, releasing what has been, really releasing this structured idea and stepping into the dream. And perhaps in some manner, taking a piece of that dream with me and letting go of the rest that I'm not ready to build right now. You know, that can feel in a Piscean world very disappointing. It can feel like disillusionment if my dream was this big, but I only can do this piece. Or I can focus on how this piece brings me joy and I desire it enough that this is what I can work with. I can be Saturnian and create something from.
Totally agree. With that, Neptune, Venus also at the end degrees of fishes, it might be a very, very inspiring and very idealistic aspect. And also I would have liked to say earlier when we're talking about fishes that it's good to remember that fishes is also associated with being very sensitive physically. Like you can also react very, very, not only to feelings, emotions, be more sensitive that way, but also physically sensitive to strong foods or strong medicines. Or so it's good, like to be observant of those kind of things around the fishes moon.
That's a really good point. Really good point. There's also, going back to something you said, Monika, there's something that feels like something is birthing right now. You know, we're in, Venus is in that last stage, that last degree of Pisces, and the waters of that womb pushing it into Aries. I think the Aries ingress is on the 20th, if we didn't already mention that. It's happening like just hours after the next full moon. So I'm sure we'll talk about that more in our next podcast. But there's that, you know, what am I stepping into? So what am I, it's, to me, it's like when you wake up in the morning, you had that amazing dream. And as you wake up, you're forgetting what the dream is, but you remember that one bit, that one sentence, that one piece of the dream, even though the rest is floating away somewhere. And okay, maybe that one piece is what I'm going to, you know, work on or reflect on. So it does feel like something is being born from our unconscious into our conscious about what we desire. And there's another contact we were talking about happening in the weeks following, that Saturn that's hanging out of that 28, 29 degrees, it is going to actually ingress into Pisces. So now we'll experience Saturn and Pisces energy, and that's happening on, I think, the 8th of March. It will, before that happens, of course, be making contact, or Mercury will be making contact with that Saturn. Mercury's moving pretty quick. And Mercury will be hitting, let's see, I got my dates written in reverse order, of course. So we have Mercury will be conjunct Saturn on the 2nd of March. and then Mercury ingresses into Pisces on the 3rd, and then Saturn will ingress out of Pisces on the 8th. So really in a row, boom, boom, boom. Kind of interesting to see what happens with our communications, our thinking, what it is we want to bring into fruition. I'm kind of wondering if this is when all of the rational, logical parts of the mind really get going with creating that goal structure, business plan, KPIs, whatever it is, like if this is when we get really put into action about how we're going to build something from our dream here in this reality.
Yeah, before the next full moon, we will have quite a few interesting aspects. So obviously we talked to the transits that happening on the new moon. But like Kimberly said, few days later, we're having quite a few, not only ingresses, but also interesting conjunctions. The 2nd of March, especially, it's interesting day. It's going to be eventful day. Here we go. It's going to be eventful day because we have that Mercury approaching to Saturn, and it will conjunct Saturn at the last degrees of Aquarius. And at the same time, we'll have Jupiter and Venus conjunct together in the sign of Aries. So 2 interesting conjunctions will make for definitely an eventful day. And Mercury and Saturn making that conjunction at the last degrees of Aquarius. Again, for me, it tells a story as well. They could have met, in Pisces, the first degrees of Pisces, but no, they decided that it's easier or maybe more impactful to meet in Aquarius. So there's something for me there around, okay, we're meeting at the last degree of the revolution, of the sign of revolution and change and rebellion. How do we strategize? And what are we thinking about it? Those are the 2 planets. Like, what's the plan? And how are we going to communicate the plan of that rebellion before we moved into Piscean water of how do we dream a different world? And I think, again, with those 2 traditional benefic, Pluto, Venus and Jupiter in Aries, there is this kind of energy of of something new, of something evolving, of something being birthed, right? Like we were saying, that fiery energy of Aries. I came, I arrived. So I'm looking forward to that 2nd of March to see what and how will that affect not just me and my life, but also the world on a bigger scale. Because it feels like there is a shift for the world, especially in that month that started with this new moon, that talks about vision and dreaming about the future. And we have Mercury and Saturn coming in and saying, let's plan that future and let's plan it in Aquarius, and see how that revolution will go. And Venus and Jupiter goes, okay, we will support from that fiery sign and we will expand that fire and that passion to go for it, to start new cycle. Jupiter is still in the sign of Aries. This is another 12-year cycle that began this year. So what is it that we're actually planning for this year, for the next 12 years? What is it that we put the seeds that Jupiter will then take away and grow in the next 12 years? So there's something about that new cycle starting and this 2nd of March that I am intrigued by.
You're right. It's going to be quite an eventful day for sure. And during this whole period of the new moon and then the waxing phase, we're going to be experiencing an interesting dynamic mix between Chiron and Mercury Mars. Mercury and Mars are making a trine. Mercury's at 12 degrees Aquarius, Mars is at 15 of Gemini at the new moon. And as they keep moving, they will keep staying within orb and trining each other. And in the middle of them is a sextile. Both Mars is making a sextile to Chiron, Mercury's making a sextile to Chiron. It's basically holding pretty close to that midpoint between them. And I think this is beautiful because Chiron, for those who aren't familiar, Chiron is named after the wounded healer. how it got its name. It's this idea of the things that we come into this life that have caused us some pain, and how we are going to bring healing to ourselves or to others or both. And so, with Chiron currently transiting in Aries, it's like all this energy is about me. Where have I gotten lost in the equation of living a life? I think is a really big message we see during this transit. And here's Mars saying, I need to take action. I need to take action, especially around the words I use or the thinking that I'm doing. And then here's Mercury, right, who's the ruler of Gemini, who's dispositing that Mars. Here's Mercury in Aquarius saying, I can think about things more objectively. I can step out for a moment and think about where I really want to be going, what my authentic self wants to say, wants to bring forward. And they're both, applying this very gentle, supportive energy to Chiron, like, okay, this is part of my karmic healing. This is not just a action I need to take. But I think earlier one of y'all mentioned that there's something very fortuitous, very fated around some of the signatures in this chart. And I feel like this might be that as well. How are we going to take action, speak our truth, be more of our authentic self than we already are, right? And move forward in a way that brings us some healing, or allows us at least to help others through the empathy we have around their pain, help them to find healing. But I think it all centers on that middle point of Aries energy. It can't be, I do it because I should, or I have to, or I can, or they need me. I don't do it because the other needs it from me. I do it because this action and these words, this is what brings me joy. This is what I want to give my energy towards. So it'll be really interesting to see a month from now how many of us have done a little course correcting in some of our plans and our goals for the year.
I wonder if the same aspect is not speaking to what will happen with Mercury and Saturn later. So obviously, this aspect is happening at the new moon, and as much as it can be a healing energy and healing experience, it also can speak to what is it, Mercury in Aquarius, what is the information that I've been given? What is the communication that I've been given about being the black sheep of the family, or not being being alien, being being not wanted, being that oddball within the family, the structure, the country? What is that messaging that I'm getting that is hitting me at my core? It's hitting me at where it hurts. It hits me where the Chiron in Aries is. Aries is very much I am. This is me. This is my core identity. So what is it about the messaging that I'm getting from that kind of Aquarian Mercury that's hitting that identity, and say, well, your identity, who you are, that I am, it's alien, it's foreigner, is not wanted here. It's it's the kind of ugly duckling from the folk mythology. It's that black sheep from from the folk tales. It's just not fitting in. And I think as the Mercury then leaves Aquarius with all that messaging and comes to a stop with the Saturn, to that conjunction, what is that messaging that ignites our fears, that can give a rise to that revolution, that Jupiter and Venus will then ignite in Aries and say, actually, the desire and the expansion that I have this desire for expansion, Venus and Jupiter, and I have the desire of expansion for I am, for who I am. And that Mercury and Saturn in that Aquarius can, for better or for worse, ignite that spark of revolution. There can be a messaging as well from from either people outside, the media, the government, of sending that message of fear as well. And we see that as well time and time again, throughout the history, where the government gave the message of fear of, this is different than us, they are different than us. So pay attention to what's happening and what archetypes are present, and whether or not that archetype, is set off because we want to bring that, together into the community, which is what Aquarius is about, or we want to alienate even further because of the fear of, they are different and I'm afraid of what that difference is.
Any final thoughts anyone wants to put out there before we move into our tips and tricks?
I just want to kind of note again, and I've done that, I think, on a few of the previous episodes, but it always amazes me that, we record those podcasts usually a few days before the energy of the new moon or the full moon. But every time amazes me how the kind of general feeling of that moon is present. So I find myself, changing the tone of my voice, changing the way I present things, using different words. Today is all so Piscean. And then when it was Leo or Aquarius, I was very much like this. And I'm not doing that consciously. It's not like, it just feels like all three of us just feeding into that energy. And whenever there was the, very fiery or very kind of, upbeat, the moon, whether full moon or new moon, we were all kind of talking one over another. We were kind of jumping in. The editing was a nightmare because you just didn't know where to cut. And then suddenly we're talking about the new moon in Pisces, and we're all very dreamy. And it's not like we're planning that, but it just amazes me. It's just one of those little things that when we want to observe, when people ask me about archetypes, I just pay attention. Sometimes it's not, you don't have to see someone's chart to know what energy is speaking through them. When they're speaking very much, like they need to get organized, and yes, do we have that spreadsheet, with the to-do list, and do we have, the packing list, which archetypes talk through them, when they go like, oh my God, let's just go on an adventure, and like I have this like old backpack and we have this weekend free, which archetype speaks through them. And you will also know, it's like, what would I like to eat today? Which archetype speaks through them. So it's sometimes just paying attention and having that ear to astrology, to those archetypes, to actually, see that flow. So I just wanted to make that digression, because I do like how unconsciously all three of us just flow within that new moon, full moon waters.
Yeah.
I have that Neptune and Venus on quite close to my south node. So I'm really like feeling that.
Yeah.
It's kind of I'm here and I'm not here. And I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
Nice.
It can be.
It can be. It can be.
Yeah. Until Saturn.
So
but then you have me a phone call away.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
So moving into, I guess, our tips and tricks and closing things up, I'm just going to jump in there and say mine's pretty straightforward and simple. If you don't already, start a dream journal. This is a time to dream, and it doesn't have to just be the dreams from when I'm sleeping and I wake up. Maybe you want to sit in the afternoon and have a daydream. Maybe it's something else, some other thing, reading a book or being with one of your pets that puts you into that dreamy state. But whenever you find yourself stepping into the dream and visualizing, or start a dream journal and just start writing it down. When we're out of the new moon, experiencing it kind of phase, we can go back and reflect on what it means. But for, these few days of this new moon energy, just let yourself float in it and just mark down what's coming to you.
That's pretty cool. I think mine will be quite related, not necessarily dream journal, but do something that you fantasize about. So if there is something that you dream of, something that takes you out of the reality, not necessarily, binge on Netflix, although that's not too bad. But if there's something that will take you out of your reality, I know, go to a theater or go to a burlesque club when you can dress up and be something else, or a fancy dress party, or whatever it is that can take you away from your reality. Maybe just, a weekend of meditation that can take you away into the world of your own, or going to a club where you can just go into the trance and dance until early hour of the morning, and again being outside of that, the reality, so to speak, or Saturnian, should I say Saturnian reality, because there are different realities out there, but Saturnian reality of times and space, right? So I would say do something that is fun, that will, it is within the safe container, but something that allows your soul escape that time and space and just feel like it's free for a bit. And maybe journal on that. See where that takes you. Give your soul wings this month.
That's a beautiful image.
Thank you.
So I think a bit different tip. It's a new moon, it's fishes. I would put something to grow, like some new seeds that you want to have, flowers. You can visualize what kind of garden you would like to have. Mix pleasure with some earth power. We don't have so much earth in this chart, but something you can actually look forward to seeing the results of later. And remember to water all your flowers when it's water moon. They're like that. That's my tip.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Well, with that, it's time, I guess, to bring our chat to a close and look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks when we are going to embrace some of the Virgo archetype on the next full moon. Until then, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in this week's AstroChat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.